WillieGene talking, WillieGene squawking, WillieGene telling the deal. WillieGene mocking, WillieGene blocking, WillieGene keeping it real.
Hey everybody, what's up? It's Will here. Thank you for watching and joining. Yesterday we did talk a little bit about some of the repercussions and actions that would be taken against you if you got into trouble or got yourself into a position where you get arrested and go to jail. What to expect, what's going to happen, and what will happen. Uh, we last finished off with understanding your rights and using your rights, like remaining silent, getting a lawyer when a lawyer is, you know, needed, obviously, which is always, never talk to cops unless you have a lawyer present. That way, a lawyer can advise you on what questions you should answer and what questions you should just keep to yourself. But let's say you get in a situation where, you know, uh, let's just say it like this. I've got a long history of being a thief, you know, um, nothing I'm proud of. And I guess it was because of the situations I was in. When you're on the run from group homes, you tend to lose all your stuff all the time, frequently. Every time you run, you can only run with what you can carry. And what you can carry is what you own. So if you run from a group home and you had a whole bunch of clothes, you can only take with you what you could fit in a bag. And then the other kids would go through your stuff and steal it and things. I'll go ahead and tell you a story real quick. So at Elizabeth and Christian Shelter one time, I had ran from there and I had left tons of stuff. Uh, I just wanted to get away. Well, me and my friend Dustin and my girlfriend at the time, and his girlfriend at the time, had rode back up to the group home later on, like maybe a week later, and I had went into the group home where all the boys were housed and stuff, and I had to go around to individual rooms to find little things of mine to gather them back and take them. I ended up getting it, but you get put in that situation a lot. It's always like that. So I would steal things at first, like clothes and shoes. And, you know, I didn't want to go to school in hand me downs and my brother's clothes and stuff like that. So, yeah, I would steal clothes, and I got caught several times stealing clothes. I got caught several times stealing stupid stuff. Eventually the adrenaline got so almost like getting high. It was the adrenaline seeking to where I'd go in and steal stuff like bubble gum for no reason at all other than to steal it. And I got caught a lot of times because of that. So when you do get caught for stuff like that, you tend to go to jail. So when you do get sent back to classification in places like that, you're going to have to learn the ropes real quick because every place is unique, every place is different. Um, you know, but the main focus is understanding the cellies. And I'll help you with this one. You want to hope that you get a good cellie. And a cellie is a cellmate. It's a person you're going to spend a lot of time with in most facilities. So, uh, hopefully you get a good cellie that at least might get commissary or some commissary once a week or once a month. Um, and that y'all can be willing to share with each other and respect each other in a sense. So if you go to jail, you need to understand that a shitter is not a pisser and a pisser is not a shitter. If you go in with a chip on your shoulder, it's gonna get hit off pretty quick because the way places work with males and female pods are different. They got their own situations, and I'm not a female, so I don't know none of it and I don't understand it because my brain ain't their brain. So they'd have to tell you their story their way. Uh, but understanding that there's respect, and when you give respect to people and you treat people with dignity, because these people that I've been around my whole life ain't bad people. A lot of people are put into situations to where they do things to get by, or they're put in a position, kind of like, let me help you understand this complex or this scenario. Okay, you're on the run. You've got a warrant for your arrest. Okay, you can't get a job because if you got a job, then you would have a warrant for your arrest. They'd come to your job to arrest you. So you need to make money to pay bills or to eat or to survive. Okay. And let's say you have somebody dependent on you. Well, if you have somebody dependent on you, that's another person you got to look out for too. So you're put in a position to where you got to make money, but you can't make it the right way. So you make it the wrong way. Or you put yourself in a position where you're using drugs and you get rid of some drugs just to get your drugs to get through your day. And a lot of situations are like that. It's built on understanding that people ain't out there. Uh, there are some people out there that choose to make choices, and I chose to keep doing the things I did, uh, not necessarily intentionally, but when things are done and over, and you're so used to going back to them same things, it's hard. It's hard. If people have a needle in their arm, then it's hard to pull that needle out of your arm and not want to feel that release of everything. Problems, pain, sleep, anything. It almost makes you not remember where, who, or what's going on in that sense. It's like, yeah, you get through that day to have fun, but then tomorrow's there, and then tomorrow you got to wake up and you got to get through that day to have fun, or there's no stability in it. But people on drugs ain't out for stability. They're out for today. So, you're not going to rehabilitate people in these jails and in these group homes. They're sending children to group homes, and nobody's going to be rehabilitated. That's not what they're doing. I tell you firsthand, I've been to tons of them, and never once have I went to a jail where they're sitting in the jail, constantly trying to make people better and make them productive. I mean, if you had my opinion, and this is my opinion, but I'd take every person that had an addiction problem to heroin or methamphetamines or pain pills, and I'd put them all on Suboxone. I'd put every single person on Suboxone. And the Suboxone will keep them from doing the other drugs. And if you do it through doctors and prescriptions, then you have people, and when the drug's cheap, then people don't even sell the drug because it's so cheap, they're not making money off of it. So it's a bad thing, but it's, to my understanding and how I feel about it, is it's better than the alternatives that we're dealing with. It's crazy, but it would fix a lot of issues. But when you go in these jails, you run into plenty of people that are suffering, that are going through 20 and 30 days of withdrawal because of Suboxone. So I'm not saying it's a great thing. And if you can slowly develop time to come off of it eventually so that you don't go back to the drugs, then you know what? That's a success as far as I see it. Now, if you do get a good celly and you ain't got one that's overdosing and, shitting all day and moaning all night because, his legs and bones and elbows and knees and your bones hurt so bad and there's nothing you can do about it except sit there and ball up and, feel heroin sick for 20 days instead of 7. I mean, you'd have been better off coming off the actual drug than that drug. But, like I said, usually people ain't coming in there withdrawing off Suboxone as much. You usually have people withdrawing off of meth and heroin, and pain pills. But you can always find anything you want to find if you know what you're doing and you know the right people, and if you strike lucky with the right kind of place. Um, but realistically, you usually want to go in, talk to your cell. You want to be respectful, and you want to know whether I mean, think of it this: think of this in your brain. You got a 10 by 10 cell, okay? And I'm giving credit, man. When I said earlier in the previous episode, you got a 15 by 10 foot cell or 15 by 15 foot cell in the drunk tank. That might not have been quite accurate, you know. So don't quote me on exact numbers. Realistically, a cell is roughly 6 foot wide and maybe 8 foot tall and 8 foot deep. It might be a 10 8 by 8. I mean, but that's probably what it is. Two bunks, both on walls, against the wall or hinged to the wall. One toilet with a sink built in, and the toilet paper goes in the hole. And there's a hole for the toilet paper. And your toilet happens to face the beds. So obviously, if you need to use the bathroom and you're a male and you're going number one, then it might be ideal for you to sit and use the bathroom instead of standing up and possibly splashing urine on people's mattresses and things. So, you might go into the wrong kind of cell with the wrong kind of person, and you might stand up to use the bathroom, and this person might get up and beat the holy shit out of you. You don't know because you might not understand that because you've never been in that situation. So you make sure you ask questions to be respectful and you get to know each other. And then you and that person are going to be the prime people that need to be really trusted together a little bit, you know, not all the way, but a little bit. And then see how far you can go with that. If you get a good celly and both of you are trusted and both of you work together, then you can get through situations pretty easy and your time can go pretty good and by pretty fast. But you got to remember you're in jail and ain't none of this going to feel comfortable and ain't none of this going to be a great situation. But you can make it as best as possible. And sometimes, even as I think back, I think, did I want to be in the cage? I mean, I put myself there a lot. So I must have wanted to be there in some sense, or else I would have stopped putting myself there like I was able to do myself eventually, anyways. You know, so if you're ever in this position, or you're a person that's watching and you are in this position, you know, stop what you're doing, go turn yourself in, do your little bit of time, get out, do your probation, get off, and then, maybe try to do something a lot different than what you're doing because it ain't going to get you nowhere and you're just going to start over later in life and it's going to take a lot more. For me, myself personally, uh, it's took a lot and I still got a lot more to dig out. I'm a ton in debt and my license are super expensive right now. So, and until I get those things cleared up, it's, them are other holes I've got to dig out of that I should have never dug myself into in the first place. Uh, Almost anybody I've ever known has always told me if they could go back, they would change certain things. I've never heard somebody say that there's nothing that they would have changed if they could have gone back. So, I mean, obviously we learn with time and we think time is really slow at first. And now I look at time and I think, God, it's moving so fast. Um, if you do get in these situations, like I said, learn to be respectful, treat each other with respect, ask what rules need to be followed, or, I mean, if I got a cellmate and I've got a cellie, I hope that he's clean and respectful and cleans the floors and, takes a shower. That's a main thing. If you go into jail and your hygiene's not good, uh, other people are going to comment about it. Other people are going to say things about it. So, I don't know. I think the first time I went to jail wasn't really any different than the group homes. But the only difference I think is that I had a more mature surrounding at first. Later in life, I go through a lot of problems with, girlfriends that I have and their ex-boyfriends being in jail, or, situations where I have an occurrence happen and go back to the same place and then there's an issue and, you get hooked on these situations. I mean, my energy level is super high and I'm very annoying. to a lot of people, especially when they first meet me. I mean, after they spend some time with me and get to know me and things like that, it's usually good. But at first, I'm just so overwhelming and so much that people have a tendency to pull back because I don't really hold back with the things I say or how I say them. It is what it is, you know. But uh, in jail, that was a lot for people to deal with, you know. So I had to really make sure that I used very smart tactics to make sure that I was protected in a sense. And a lot of these situations are easily understood. Let me say it like this. There's always going to be a store in every jail you go in. Okay? And it don't matter where you're at, there's going to be a store. There's always going to be commissary. There's always going to be people buying commissary. And there's always going to be people trading commissary. And there's always going to be people to, loan commissary. And these people are called pod bosses. And pod bosses don't mean that they really, it's not that they run shit, but they do. You know, they can run the pod, but you can also have a pod boss that is the pod boss because he's got a lot of homies, so he's the pod boss. You see what I mean? He don't have to be like a big 6'5", 280 on some, he ain't got to be like that. But a lot of times when you go into jail, of course, everybody's working out. You know, a lot of people work out, getting routines. Almost every jail I've ever been in, there's always Aryans, there's always Bloods, there's always Crips. Um, the gang follows it from even juvenile all the way over to adults, and adults are big on that too. And there's some counties that are segregated, to where there are cells that are white only cells, there are cells that are black only cells, there are cells that are Hispanic only cells, there's cells that are PC only cells and things like that. So I mean, it just depends on where you go and things. But honestly, you want to know who's in charge and who runs the pod, and you want to know who stores out and who runs the store, because the store is going to give you a key function. Now, I ain't gonna say this is going to work for everybody, but for me, I found this a really easy tactic that helped me and also benefited them to the point that I knew money's important. And you can get money several different ways. You could have people help you with money. You can have people put money on your books, buy your commissary. Uh, you can also wash clothes for people for commissary. You can draw pictures for people for commissary. You can, you know, draw a nice picture on an envelope. They used to let you draw pictures on envelopes and then send them out. Now they don't really like it so much, so it just depends on how the guards want to be on that. And there's good and bad guards, but for the most part, on guards, that cotton badge, man, it goes straight to their head, and they are there writing laws and making laws. They ain't enforcing nothing. They just, it's almost like when you get that little bit of power, you want to abuse and use it on other people and treat other people how you've been treated. And that's what I see most of the time with them. Now, the female guards, they come in there and they do shit intentionally. Like, they know that if they come into an all male dormitory like that they'll get quite a bit of attention. So you'll always have simps running around and white knights, and they'll be trying to talk to these married guards that are going home to their husband and things like that. I never saw any reason to, I don't know, insinuate that. Not that, I mean, I wouldn't even date a guard anyways. Just because the simple fact that I've never been into cotton badges, period. Just haven't. So, I mean, maybe ask me. I do know other people, and I'll give you these two stories. Then I'll tell you about the shop and the store, and then I'm gonna get off here for today, and I'll make you another video tomorrow or something. Um, but realistically, it was one of my friends. I think it's actually happened twice, but I'll just say it like this. In Greene County, back in the day, there was a dude there that was, I mean, he was a hell of a pity pat player. Um, and pity pat's a card game that you play and you match hands and stuff, or just anything, blackjack, poker. There's always cards running. There's always a card table. It don't matter what jail or prison you go to. It's always like that, and a lot of money on the table usually. So he was he was in this jail for quite a while, but he was a smooth guy, smooth talker, and he did end up talking one of the guards into leaving her husband, and they did get married eventually, but like he talked her into leaving her husband, and then they were together while she was a guard, and then she was bringing stuff in for him and stuff like that, and then I don't think he escaped, but if I can remember correctly, he got away for like a couple of days, and then they brought him back, and then they found out that she was the one helping him or something like that, and then she got charged and put in the same jail and all this stuff. So I have seen situations where stuff like that happens, or I've had friends of mine in county getting grips of stuff from guards. Guards that my one friend Black, man, his name's Black, but he was a little white boy. But everybody called him Black, and he was real smooth with it. Like he would have his family pay a guard like $500 to bring in a skull can full of like Subutex and weed and cigarettes and pills and stuff like that. And one time we were in Washington County, and this was a little later in life. I was probably about 25, 26. And I remember he was coming over to the bunk, and the way he'd keep it is he'd put a sock and he'd put the skull cans down into the sock, and then he'd put the sock inside his pants. And on your pants, you ain't got no pocket. And on your shirt, sometimes you'll have a pocket right here, but fools be trying to be stupid and stuff, and they'll grab your pocket and try to rip it off just to pocket check you. You know, uh, I mean, I might have had my pocket checked one time by one of my homies, and we had pocket checked each other, just tearing each other up a little bit, but never by any strangers or things like that. But they used to do that all the time. So a lot of the shirts just didn't have pockets on them. So you put the sock down your pants and you put the little top over it, and then he'd walk around the cell like that, and he'd have all that on him. You know what I mean? And one time we had one of these strict guards that come in. He's real by the book, a good dude though. See, that's a good officer, or a good correctional officer. Is the guy who comes in and does things by the book for the most part. If he sees stuff in your window, he don't care about that. Or if he sees you have a picture under your bed at the bottom of the cell, he don't care about that. Or if you ain't quite up and dressed and looking at, he's not going to check you over it. He's going to follow the rules, but he's going to let you slide on them little petty things because he's not a newbie and he's not a rookie, and he's not in there just to push the boundaries on purpose because you get a cotton badge and it goes to your head and you want to enforce rules right then and right there and be like, oh, well, you're going to stay in your cell all day on lockdown because you didn't take a cup out of your window. Some of these things on certain episodes of shows that y'all see on TV is legit, and them things do happen. And some of these county jails are just like that. Some of them, man, I've been in situations where I've watched dudes get their heads just. I mean, you see stuff, and I'll give you a for instance. There's an episode on TV about Clark County Jail, okay? And if you ever want to see a boy get his head beat in pretty good, okay? There's an episode where a boy walks down and he was a Marine, and they had found out he was snitching. He was gone for so long that when he come back, they knew he was talking, because you ain't going to be gone out of the cell for an hour to meet detectives unless you're talking and snitching. So when that happens and you come back in, we already know what the business is and you're already lit. And that's what they did. They lit dude up, and it made me feel bad for the dude at first when I saw the episode. But, understanding the whole back door of that, I didn't feel bad for him because, he probably went there and, said a lot of stuff about people that obviously if he had just took his time that he was already going to get anyways. But so I've seen situations where it's been really bloody and stuff like that. And I'll tell you them later on. These are, I try to push out through little teeny bits, and that's only because I've got so many that I'll have to go back sometimes like that. Like how I went back to Elizabeth and Christian Shelter to tell you I went back up there to get more stuff, and I actually went in and got out. And I knew it was on a Sunday. I knew they were at church, so I was able to actually get my things back. Now, you wouldn't have known that from me telling you about Elizabeth and Christian Shelter, and it's because it's hard to. Some of these stories go with other stories, you know. Understanding why I'm at these places or stuff, they'll come soon enough too. So, uh, but anyways, so when it comes to the store, you definitely need to find the store man as soon as you can. And I wouldn't suggest going to the store man and owing the store a ton of money, but I would suggest going in, being respectful to people, and this is a big no-no and a big thing you need to know about. You need to understand the phone system. Now, the phone system, you're going to have phones on the walls. You're going to have a PIN number that's going to be your number. That's not to be shared with nobody, no, not even your friends. Um, your PIN number is your money. And if somebody sees you put your PIN number in, they can use your PIN number to make phone calls. I mean, it don't matter who I'm calling. It just matters that I've got a PIN and it's got money on it. So the best way to do it is to have your friends and family put time on their phone so that people can't steal your PIN at all. And then people have time on their phone so they're the only people you can call. And that way their money goes towards you talking to them and no one else. Uh, it just makes it safe for you and them. Now, with the phone system, though, there's going to be some pods two phones, some pods four phones, some pods they've got four phones, but only two phones work, and you need to understand whose phones those are. Now, you might walk into a pod that is, like I said, it could be whites only, and that sounds so 1950s that it shocks my brain, but there are sales like that, and you don't have to worry about the phones. If it's whites only or blacks only, and you go into them sales, then them phones are automatically, all either black people or white people's phones. I never understood segregation, and it wasn't like that as a juvenile, but it was more like that as an adult. Sounds crazy. So when you go into sales that are like classification or your first pod or you're in the pod waiting for your court in a week or 2 weeks, then you need to ask whose phones and who uses the phones and how the phones go. You don't just go up to the phone, you ask people about the phones. And that way you can understand because there's some places, even here in Utah, to where you go up to a phone and somebody would, possibly get into a fight with you over the fact that uh, the phone system is set up. Maybe, the two first ones are whites and then the middle one is Hispanics. You know what I mean? And then the last one is like a shared phone or something. Uh, it just depends, like I said, on in, in, in what place you are and what system you are. But don't forget to ask questions. Don't be scared to ask questions, and don't be scared of anybody in the pod. Everybody in the pod is there for their own reasons, and everybody in the pod is going through their own issues and their own struggles with their families, their friends. Uh, you know, People in jail ain't really worried about just acting out. Now, I have seen situations where people in jail do act out intentionally and they do stuff like that, but usually in these jails, man, they handle that shit quick. I mean, you don't usually get to fight too long. On some of these episodes I've seen on TV, you see these fights on there and they're lasting way longer than they normally would. And that's because they're going into facilities that are really kind of messed up and they're there to try to fix situations. A lot of facilities I went into were messed up, but they wasn't going to be fixed at all. So, you know, things ran how they ran. But as far as fights, they didn't, no jail tolerates fighting and they get there as quick as possible. But from my viewpoint of it, they get there as quick as possible because they want that physical encounter. They want to come in and tackle you and hit you with, tear gas, and they want to They want to come in there and tase you. They want to put their knee in your back. They want to put their knee on your neck. I mean, I understand people being safe, but if you got somebody pinned to the ground, their hands behind their back, in cuffs, why would you need your legs still there? You wouldn't. But, they want to take stuff overboard. It's not all of them. Like I said, there's a small percentage of cops, and I've dealt with so many cops that I have a good statistical average by my own eyes of how it goes, and I get the gist of it. I don't get offended when cops pull me over because I understand. I'm driving cars that are loud music, usually look kind of rugged or don't have proper tags or registration. Then, of course, I'm going to get pulled over. They're going to question me. I do get that and understand it. Um, but when you do, or if you're ever in that situation and you do go to jail, and you're in the classification or you're in the pod for a couple weeks, uh, like I said, don't borrow a lot, but it might be ideal for a person like you, possibly, depending on who you are, to go in and say, hey, look, I got $50 on my books right now. I can order commissary, but I can't order it for a week because when you go to jail, you usually don't get commissary. You can order it, but you usually can't order it but like, a week until you get your PIN number and stuff, maybe a couple days. And then it might be next week until you get your commissary. So you're going to want to find people to help you out a little bit if you can. And if you got money on your books and you can show them that you got money on your books, then you can borrow a couple of things, but you're going to be paying a little bit more back. It's usually 2 for 3. So if they give you 2 of something, you give them 3 back. Or 4 for 7. You give them 4, you get 7 back. Or really it's 4 for 6, but sometimes if they're borrowing you more like that, like let's say they give you 7 for 10 is a great deal, but most people want 6 for 10 because they're giving you so much at once. um, so it just depends on the person. Sometimes people will give you one thing for one thing back. Sometimes people will give you 1 for 2. But like I said, your best bet's 2 for 3 or 3 for 5. I mean, it's pretty good too, but it just depends on you and what you can afford to do. But owing a little bit of money ain't a super big deal. But let's say you're there a week and you're having small issues with somebody that don't really matter. Just somebody that might be like having a small issue with you over something stupid. Then let's say you owe the pop boss or you owe the store $20. Okay. More than likely, the store owner is going to keep that little, person that's causing them small issues in check. And they're going to do that because they know that person's preying on, or let's say he's giving a hard time or smarting off with, or you got to worry that them two are going to get in a fight and then they're both going to go to the hole and you're going to lose your $20. Okay. It's better just tell that dude, hey, chill the fuck out. Don't fuck with him. Just leave him alone. He owes me money right now. You can fuck with him next time he pays me or something. Okay. And then usually by the time you pay that person, uh, you know, they're usually wanting to store you out a little bit more because then you're good money. And if you're good money, people don't want you out to sell because your money comes in and you pay your debts. So what you're doing is they're making a little profit off you. Well, if there's 60 people in the pod and I can make a $10 profit off all 60, then that's $600 a week I can make. That's only $10 on each person. And most of these pods have, I mean, C-Pod in Washington County had over 200 people in it. So, and don't get me into this boxing. I mean, because, sorry guys, sometimes my camera tends to want to follow me. And I tend to want to put my hand up like that too. Uh, but yeah, we'll talk about some of that stuff later on. This has been a long enough video on about basic nonsense. I appreciate y'all guys watching the video. I like that there's at least somebody watching them. So I appreciate it. Like and subscribe, and I'll get some more videos out and some better quality videos, and then I'll work on some of these songs. I've got a really catchy little thing I want to do for the intros, but for right now, I'm working with what I got, and check back in when I make another video. And I've been trying to keep them a little shorter just so that people can watch them and get through them, because I know attention spans like mine don't last that long. We'll talk more about different jails and experiences next time, and who knows, it may be on subject, it may not. It just depends. When I come here to start talking and I get to talking, then who knows what I could say. Y'all guys have a great afternoon and a good night, and we'll see you later.
WillieGene talking, WillieGene squawking, WillieGene telling the deal. WillieGene mocking, WillieGene blocking, WillieGene keeping it real.